Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Every month as part of the CKC design team, we build scrapbooking kits based on an inspiration kit. And every month I create my own embellishments to go along with my kit. This month our kit is from Tracy Reed and it's called Time to Thrive. And I was inspired by the Digi kit that had these accordion hearts and by her printable embellishments that had these labels on there. So I'm going to take that inspiration and create my own. I'm going to start with the accordion hearts, which is a little bit more of a challenge for me because I've never done this before. I don't know how to do it. I've got to figure it out. So I am going to start with colors of scrap cardstock from my stash that kind of coordinate with the kit that I put together. And if you haven't seen my kit build, I will link you up to that both up in the corner and down in the show notes so that you can find that. So I'm starting with greens and yellows and blues in various sizes and shapes of scrap paper, and I'm going to make those work for these accordion hearts. And now that I've got my material set up, I have to figure out how to do this accordion heart. I've done other accordion style things before, so I know about 1/4 inch of scoring thickness, and here's my paper all scored and ready to go, will give me enough depth for the accordion and not too much depth to go in a page protector in my binders. So I start off with a bigger piece of paper than I need, and then I figure out how big I want the heart to be, so I cut it down to what I think is a good height, and then I realize I want the flaps on the ends of the hearts to both fold downward. So when you're folding, you've got a mountain fold and a valley fold. Mountain pokes up, valleys go down. And I'm trying to balance out these folds. And I realized that I need to have an equal number of mountain folds on each side of this heart, and then the valley fold will be the center of the heart, which I can make as the point. So then I draw a shape on my flattened out little accordion piece of paper, and when I fold it back up, it's not quite right, and it takes me a little while to figure out why it feels off. Part of it is that the little flappies on the end are just too short, and part of it is that it looks really fat, and I'm not quite sure why it seems so fat. So I go through some processes of trying to figure out that shape. In the meantime, I am settling some notes down for getting the sizing of this thing just right. And I take the practice heart off, and this is probably like practice number 2 or 3 at this point, and I put it back on my paper, and I realize maybe if I make the bottom flatter, those little flappies on the side will feel less awkward. So I go through this process of trying to create a shape that is flatter on the bottom and less bulbous on the side. And I go through different iterations of this. I trim it, I open it up, I look at it, I think about it some more, I take it back apart, and I trim it down again. And here I am for another time. This shape is starting to get too far away from a heart shape. And then I think, what if I just leave the bottom completely flat? Because when you pinch the bottom of this accordion, that is giving you the point of the heart. So I probably don't even need to cut off any of that shape at the bottom. I just need a nice arc at the top. And sure enough, that is what does the trick. So I've figured it out. Yay! Have you ever tried to figure something out that you've seen online without necessarily a tutorial to go with it and had failures or successes? So I'm glad I had a success, and I've created a little pattern to make this a little easier. My papers are cut 4 inches long by 2 inches tall. I'm scoring them at 1/4 of an inch, and it ends up being 15 total score marks, and that gives you an additional 1/4 inch at the end. And because no scoring is perfect, you're not going to get it exactly right every single time. When I get to that very end, and I will get there in just a moment, I'm trying to push this paper all the way through without getting my fingers in there. So when I get to that very end, depending on how far apart or narrow my actual score lines are, I'm going to have possibly some excess left at the end, and I just cut that down to a final 1/4 of an inch so that it's the same size as everything else, or close enough. And then I'm going to put my little template on there. I'm going to trace my arc on the back side, so I fold the paper in half and put the template onto that fold, trace it on the back side. And then I will cut around that arc, open it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and glue it. Now, in the end, I end up accordion folding it first, then opening it back up to put all the glue on. But the thing to note about the glue is you don't want to put any glue on that final little flap, because that's where you're going to be pinching it and holding it. And because there's glue front and back, it'll hold everything together. So don't put any glue on the very, very ends, and pinch it closed. And as you're pinching it, go ahead and fluff up. And I'm kind of flattening out a little bit of those accordions at the top of the heart shape. And as I'm folding and fluffing, that's giving the glue enough time to set. And I have some lovely embellishments. All right, I am ready to work on these labels. I do have this die set from Tim Holtz that both you can ink and die cut at the same time. So it will print like a stamp and die cut at the same time. However, I've seen some demos of this, and Tim Holtz recommends using the archival inks. So I did find a little package of mini archival inks so that I could try some different colors and try this out. Now, I've played with this just a tiny bit, but that was before I had these archival inks. So I'm wondering if this archival ink is going to do better. He did recommend brayering the inks on. So I have this little brayer for working nicely with these little ink pads. So I'm going to brayer up each little die individually, and I picked just a few sizes to go with my kit to see. One of the things I was having trouble with is that I'm working on a silicone mat, which is actually naturally has a tacky quality to it, and everything, including my dies and my die cut plates, were sticking to that, and that was causing some slippage around. So I'm doing a couple things here. I'm elevating the die cut plate off because I just set it on a couple of the ink pads, and hoping that will work. Now, the ink seemed to have dried a little too quickly, so instead of inking each one really independently, I'm trying to ink them up all quicker in a row so that when I get them down on my paper, the ink has less time to dry, and that will give it a better impression when it runs through the die cut machine. So that elevation worked better to get my plates run through the die cut machine without me tipping them and causing slippage. But things still aren't perfect. The ink still seems to be drying a little fast, and it's a little splotchy. So then I turn to directly inking one die at a time with the ink pad to see if those results are any better. And when I run that through, it is better. It's not perfect. I think because this is Tim Holtz, a lot of his ideology is distress. So it definitely has some of that splotchy distressiness to it. If that's the look you like, great. If you want something more smooth and tidy, that's what I was trying to go for here. I don't mind distressing, but what I was really hoping for was some nicely printed label images. So I'm trying again, trying to ink them up all as fast as I can, all in one go, getting them all on there, and getting my plate on. And of course, I tipped it and it slipped, and I will get some ink smearing when that happens. But trying to work a little faster like this I'm hoping it will save me some time and give me a better impression. And in the end, they're all okay. So far, this has not been my favorite die, and it's not working out quite how I had envisioned. And you know, that's something we go through as crafters. We get these products in front of us and we have high hopes, and they don't always work out. But I am going to keep playing with this one to see if I can get some better results. So perhaps I'll have an update for you in the future. Until then, I hope you have some artful days.